Ladies and gentlemen, I see we have quorum, and I call this meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee to order. First order of business is to adopt the agenda that has been circulated. I have a motion by Councillor Ribbiak that the agenda for the March 16, 2015 regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adopted. Any changes, additions? If not, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Motion carried. First order of business is we have a motion by Councillor King. Oh, pardon me. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I should know this one by heart. Are there any pecuniary interests among the committee for any of the issues tonight?
No, Mr. Chair.
Please record that. Thank you. First order of business. I have a motion by Councillor King that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file number SP01-15 for Block 13, 59M-406, municipally known as 2, 4, and 6 Braden Way, and further that committee direct planning staff to prepare the site plan agreement, and bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the town of Pelham and U. Lucetta Construction Limited for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Discussion. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question with regard to public comments. I guess what's going to happen here is that we're going to move from the anticipation that there will be single family dwellings on these properties, and they're going to turn into townhouses, and that's going to come as a surprise, I would think, as I read it, to people in the area. If not, then my question is moot. But will it be a surprise? Ought we have public input just to be sure that people know what's happening in their areas?
Perhaps I'll ask the director to comment on that.
2 points on that through you, Mr. Chair. The Plan Act spells out that there should be no public involvement in this type of application because it is actually a contract between the developer and the town or municipality as to what happens. The reason that's been designed that way purposely by the province is to reduce NIMBYism, not in my backyard syndrome. The public has had ample opportunity typically to vet their opinions and voice their concerns through subdivision, condominium, official plan, zoning, bylaw amendment, etc. When we usually get to site plan, it's dealing with site-specific key issues that the town normally controls, and again, the province wants to prevent NIMBYism, in my opinion. In terms of whether the residents that are surrounded should be surprised at a townhouse development, I do not believe so. It was always developed as a block in the subdivision and presented as townhouse development on the south side is in terms of my understanding, and therefore there should be no surprise in my opinion.
Does that bring clarity, Councillor Ribbiak?
It does. My concern was that perhaps this had been presented, and I couldn't recall it specifically, but it may have been presented as single-family housing, and then, of course, a block would have come as a surprise. But if we're being told that the public meetings held in the past on the broader picture did present these as blocks as opposed to single-family housing, then I'm fine with it. But let's be sure that that's the case.
So, Mr. Director, for absolute clarity, this block has always been zoned as for townhouse use. What we're doing is now getting down to the specifics of how that building will sit on the lot and the buffering, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. And when the application went through subdivision, I'm almost positive the applicant developer suggested the townhouse use on the site. It was structured as a block for that purpose. So if it was single family, it would have been divided differently.
I'm fine. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just to say that I'm pleased that planning staff and the applicant have resolved issues that were there and have come to an agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Papp, I saw you
No,
raised your
I'm
hand.
good.
You're fine.
No, my answer.
Any other
kind of
comments?
answer. No.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. I have a motion by Councillor Junkin that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue summary report as it pertains to the formation of a comprehensive zoning bylaw review advisory committee for the purpose of the development and review of the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw. And further to that, committee direct planning staff to finalize the terms of reference for the comprehensive zoning bylaw review advisory committee and present said terms in a recommendation report to council for consideration. Discussion. Councilor Ribbiak, don't be shy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just don't want to be hogging the discussion, that's all. So perhaps we can hear something from the planner with respect to where are we in the development of the zoning bylaw to this stage. I understood that we'd been working on it for a period of time. Now I see that we want to go to a committee to assist with it. Is this to take a look at work that's previously been done, or is it within some specific terms of reference with regard to the zoning bylaw? I just want to know whether, well, just exactly where we are in this process. Are we starting afresh, or is this partway through, or whatever the case is?
Mr. CAO?
Just to provide some clarity, this isn't an advisory committee on our new zoning bylaw. This is a advisory committee based on the province's requirement for a review of zoning. So they're two separate issues.
Ah, okay. Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for me.
Any other questions? So
Just-
I have a question that pops immediately into mind with that comment. Will they not be looking at our new comprehensive zoning bylaw as part of their process?
If it's approved, yes, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So they won't look at it until it comes before council? They won't be involved in instructing the development of it?
No, again, this is the review required by the province, which I believe is next year. Is that correct?
Mr. Director?
Mr. Chair, the CAO is partially correct, that we are required to amend our zoning bylaw to bring it into conformity with our new official plan, which was just approved last year. We have a total of 3 years to get it approved into conformity, so it needs to be through council and approved by that date. Appeal periods and that are separate to that. So this committee is correct that it's designed to look at that review of the zoning. The town's going to do it through the comprehensive review of our zoning now to develop a new zoning bylaw comprehensively for the town, again, to come into conformity, as the CAO was suggesting. If that answers your question, Mr.
I'm a little confused. I don't know about the rest of you guys. Mr. Mayor, do you have a comment?
My understanding is that this, maybe we should hear from the director for Councilor Ribbiak's first question in terms of the timing. His concern was that we would hold up the timing of the comprehensive zoning bylaw to follow in conformity with the official plan, that 3-year window that we have.
Okay.
Because what I've just heard is what it says in the report, that this will actually assist and be an advisory committee on the redesign of the entire zoning bylaw, as Councilor Ribbiak indicated. So maybe we could hear the timing and whether this would affect the timing, as Councilor Ribbiak asked.
Mr. Director?
In preliminary review of our current zoning bylaw, which was done in 1987, there are an enormous amount of inconsistencies between our new official plan and the current existing bylaw. The town is elected, I believe last year, to move ahead with a comprehensive review of our zoning, to bring it into conformity, as well as look at perhaps a different structure to our zoning bylaw, so it's more user-friendly and achieves the objectives of the town's goals and objectives. The committee itself will be established to continue the work of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, which again brings it into conformity with the official plan once approved. This is a necessary step of this process. Our consultants have begun work on the comprehensive zoning bylaw. We're at the point now where we need an advisory committee to vet issues amongst the community before we move ahead with developing and designing the zoning bylaw itself. So this is more of a structural stage, moving ahead to actually continuing the process of the zoning bylaw.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to summarize then, they're not looking at the old bylaws. They're looking at the recommendations of our consultant with respect to the new comprehensive bylaw, such that the changes that are being recommended will be vetted at this committee prior to them coming to council. So the development community, et cetera, will have a look at them, and if there are any holes in it, they'll try and point them out and make suggestions around that. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's absolutely correct. The point of the committees and that is to vet it through the public and the stakeholders, et cetera, so that when it comes to council, you won't have a lot of objections in front of you.
Thank you. Does that clarify it? Does anybody else have any questions around that? Councilor Ribbiak, you look
Yeah,
perplexed.
I thought it was clear, and then it's not so clear, and now it's thick as mud. So we developed this committee, this advisory committee. As I understand it, because we have a regulatory requirement to review our zoning regime relative to the official plan. And taking any effort at a comprehensive review of our zoning plan out of the question, that seems clear. But that review would have to take place with regard to the zoning regime as we have it now. We are, however, contemplating a different regime. If we had that different regime, then the review that's being done on the current regime would not perhaps be relevant. Would we have to do another one? Or do we wait, a regulatory period of time, like 10 years before we do another one? And if we have that committee and we're working on a comprehensive zoning bylaw, will their input be helpful in developing the new zoning bylaw that we have now? And is, in fact, the intent that that committee be helpful in that regard?
So did you get all those questions, Mr. Director?
Yeah, to sum it up,
Okay.
the old zoning bylaw, current one, we have 1987, and the proposed new zoning bylaw per se that's allocated in the budget for development is one and the same. We have to conform our zoning bylaw to the official plan. We're going to review our existing zoning bylaw to find out what works and what doesn't work. We're going to develop a new official plan to build upon those successes of our current zoning bylaw, however, improve upon and correct things that aren't in conformity. So this committee will essentially, the consultant that will go through the work of reviewing the existing official plan, existing zoning bylaw, will help develop the scope and review the information of the new the zoning bylaw, and then once the product's done, before it's presented to council, hopefully come into agreement that it's what we can all agree to, I guess, before it comes to council.
Yeah. Councilor Ribbiak, does that help?
I'm going to be watching to see how this develops, and we'll be noting, no doubt, with interest as we come to certain crossroads. I think I understand. The problem is I think I understand, and which means that I might not.
I think what the director is looking for is some help on a broad base across the community to look at the bylaws, zoning bylaw, and bring forward a bylaw that will be in compliance with our new official plan and help to enforce and regulate that plan, right? Drive that
For
plan.
clarification, the advisory committee won't be doing work per se.
no.
The consultants will be doing the work for us.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Just in terms of, I understand it now, given what I read, and the answers have been given. So in terms of the makeup of the committee, there's some confusing things here in terms of this. And some of these, I think, maybe should be replaced with things that are relevant to our community. So the intention, I would gather, is to get sort of general feedback from across the community. So there's the development industry, there's landowners, so I guess that'd be sort of community members at large, which is being recommended. Planning staff, of course, there would be ex officio. But sometimes when this council looks at changing things, doing things, I think about our economic development plan or the sign bylaw. I point to Councillor Durley because he led that. We often call on representatives from across the community. So I'm thinking of, for example, the Chamber of Commerce or representatives from the Pelham Business Association. Would those be appropriate people to include instead of some of these more generic folks to include in the terms?
Absolutely. The terms of reference here are drafted in front of you today, and they're to give you an idea of the scope and the mandate of what the committee would do, also the makeup of the committee. There's been a few suggestions as to the types of members that could be on here. They're just suggestions. We can scope that. And through your comments, the Chamber of Commerce, the business, the Pelham Business Association and the Niagara South Federation of Agriculture,
Yeah.
maybe one as well, which we can have sit on this committee. Again, we want a wide spectrum, as you say.
Yeah, I think that's important, given the blend that we have, the urban and rural blend, which is in our strategic plan, to have representatives of the agricultural committee on that. And I know probably a lot of those zoning, what was the term that the director used, Mr. Chair, but anomalies, I'll say, where they're not in conformity with the official plan and the zonings there, that really does affect a large part of the agricultural area. And I know we had a representative of the agricultural community on our redoing of the sign bylaw, but maybe to formalize it with a formal group, with somebody represented from the Federation of Agriculture, might be a better way to do it.
I think, good points. I hope the director, I don't think we need to make a specific direction to that. The director,
I do just have one more question about the makeup, and so there's, before Councillor Durley, I am cognizant, sorry, it says lawyers, as if they're their own category or something. What's the intention under lawyers? Or is it the hope that some of the representatives might have a legal background? Can you clarify that?
Yep, again, this is a list of people that, just kind of catch-all people that we would like to be seen on this association, this advisory committee. Lawyers being one of them, again, as you said, because of their legal background, we like some expertise, I guess, in this profession. And also, I'm sure we have a number of lawyers in this Niagara region area who may be interested to participate in this advisory committee and provide advice to us as we move forward to develop a perfected plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Durley.
Thank you. Just building on that, I think lawyers get paid by the word. Are we going to need a budget for this, or are we going to need, or this is going to be a voluntary thing?
That, through you, Mr. Chair, that is a voluntary committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
For bringing that to the table. It's a very important issue. Any further discussion? Councillor Papp.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Director, I'm struggling with this. And forgive me, and please bear with me. We're gonna put together a brand-new zoning bylaw, right? It's gonna replace the old one, forgive my simplicity. It's gonna comply with our existing new official plan. Why do we need these people? Why can't we do a peer review as required?
The consultant and myself too felt it was the best approach to develop an advisory. Instead of having everyone comment on everything, we bring
Right.
together parts of the community as a whole to give us feedback as we begin this development of the zoning bylaw, as well as when we complete the final draft to it to present to council. That would give the best buy-in from the whole community, because this doesn't just affect developers,
yeah.
it affects landowners and everybody, right? And instead of having an army of thousands to take select people to represent those areas, again, it's voluntary, and we would be soliciting people to volunteer for this advisory committee, and then it'd be at the discretion of council who we picked if we had a huge number of applicants.
Follow-up?
Oh, wait, I'm thinking that, all right, I'm thinking of the value of the impact, because technically as an advisory group, if they come back with some suggestions that obviously are sort of in opposition to what we're suggesting, then we ultimately have the final say anyways, right? We can either yay or nay. I just want to be clear that when we go out to engage these people as strategic advisors to this, right? Because it's vitally important. I mean, it's going to determine how we go about developing and building our community. And people need to understand that at the ground level as well as those that are the professionals, right? They need to know what we're doing. So I'll wait and see. Is this a requirement or is it by the province, or is this something that the consultants have suggested?
It's not a requirement. We do need to go out to the public for
The public engagement,
the
right?
zoning bylaw eventually. This process of bringing the public in through the development of it is a consensus building.
Okay, so, but you still would need to go through the public meeting process anyways. Okay, thank you, okay. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Just one final observation for myself, and very briefly. I'm reminded that when we were talking about change in our zoning regime, we were going to move to built form-based zoning. And I'm just really anxious that we don't lose the essence of that in this process. I think we were all pretty excited at the prospect that we would have something that would be pretty useful to us, because it would go a long way from kind of same old, and I'm anxious that not happen. So that's my only observation.
You want to comment on that?
Mr. Director?
The intent is to go to a transect or built form type of zoning code. That is just a method of presenting the information and thinking about how to develop the town over time. That would all be vetted out through the development of the zoning bylaw, but to be assured that that is the way we're thinking, this is the way we're intending to go.
Mr. Chair, there appears to be some questions for members of council, and it appears that staff need to do a little bit more work in terms of the terms of reference, et cetera, given the conversation that we have. I'd like to make an amendment that instead of a recommendation report being sent to council, that it be sent to committee of the whole on April 7th. Just so that it'll give that sort of sober thought that we can have in the discussion we can have at committee as opposed to council.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Discussion around the amendment?
No, it doesn't need a second, does it?
Doesn't need a second.
No, that's right. No, good idea.
Call the amendment. All those in favor? Okay. Any further discussion around the, no? So, I call the main motion with the amendment that the recommendation report would go to the next COW meeting for consideration. All those in favor?
Carried.
Should I just put this up? Or should I?
Just put count aside and initial it. I have the amendment here.
Okay. Next item of business, motion by Councillor Durley that the Policy and Priority Committee receive the issue summary report as it pertains to the formation of the Community Improvement Plan Advisory Committee, and further that committee direct the planning staff to discontinue work on the development of a Community Improvement Plan Advisory Committee, as such a committee is seen as redundant at this time. Discussion. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure that I disagree that might be redundant at this time. I'm just wondering, though, whether in fact we shouldn't be giving our consideration to a committee that considers some larger questions with regard to CIP, like where they are, what their boundaries are, what's included for grants, that sort of thing, kind of the big principal questions, as opposed to the specific technical questions around what ought to be granted and what ought not to be granted. I think I agree that something at that level is redundant, but at the bigger level, I think it could be quite useful.
To accomplish what you want to do with the CIP, means you have to open up the whole CIP for review and reconsideration.
And perhaps the advisory committee's role is to take a look at that and give some advice with regard to the big question. It's just that I think this committee might be redundant, the other committee might be a useful one, and I'm just putting that out there for whatever consideration it might deserve, which might not be much.
Any comments to that issue?
Tangentially, if you allow it, Mr.
So
Chair.
can I have the director chime in on that first, Mr.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you don't mind?
Of course.
I agree with the statement by Councillor that we should, this committee may be redundant as per my recommendation. However, on a larger context, the advisory committee may be useful. However, I don't believe we're at that stage yet. I will be proposing to senior management as well through council that we look at the CIP policy perhaps next year and maybe look at the mandate scope and all the other things that go along with it. And at that point in time, if we're given the direction to go ahead with the review of the CIP policy and plan, that we develop an advisory committee for that regard.
And to that, I think that was the vision originally when it came in, that after a 5-year period, it'd be reviewed and see how well it's working and how it could be adjusted and what have you. And that'd be a perfect role for a committee. Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up.
I do, thank you very much. I guess it's good to have things in writing, because then it clarifies what people were thinking or not thinking. So I appreciate the report from staff. However, I was thinking about something totally different when council approved staff to look at this. So the idea was, and maybe we went from idea right to solution, so that was part of the problem. But my understanding of the idea was there are these grants available, and is there some way to encourage conversions or improvements? Is there some way to encourage individual property owners to use the CIP funds that are available? I thought that the committee, for lack of a better word, would be sort of a group to encourage others to take advantage of the CIP program. They may make recommendations in terms of design. Maybe there's something we can do with a number of properties and design a number of properties together and showcase that. That's what I thought the committee was. But that's just one possible solution to that problem that I see, Mr. Chair, is that we do want more and more and more property owners to take advantage of this, because it is improving our downtown. We have seen, or we did see last year, an uptake in downtown Fawn Hill, which is wonderful and commendable, and we approved a number of them, and they look fabulous. Is there something for the other part of town which is being redone, downtown Fenwick? That was my thinking. So maybe the solution was presented as, here, form a committee, which is the one thing that we said we wouldn't do under, we looked at it strategically, et cetera. But really that, I think, is an important thing for us to look at. But I'm also glad that you and Councilor Ribbiak brought up the idea of a review of the CIP and the boundaries and those kind of things. That's important too. Thank you.
Councilor Gurley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, perhaps something that we should be doing right now is to send out the message again to say this is in place, and by that there would be an encouragement for folks to do it. This is available if you want to take advantage of it. This is what's there. The education piece that's out there, I think maybe because it's gone a little stale, that people have forgotten about it. If we put the message out again through perhaps Anna's department to come through with that, here's what it is, here's how you can take advantage of it, and contact that probably would be something that would get the ball rolling at least, and just perhaps renewing the education.
Right. Very good point. Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now that planning staff, planning department is at full contingent, we do have Andrew, our new planner. He's been assigned to deal with the CIP program and be our CIP coordinator for the town. As part of that role, what we're planning on doing is he actually has begun this, going actually door to door to the business owners and the property owners and advising them of this program that we have. And he will be hitting, Fenwick, all the CIP areas that we have available to promote this as well. I think it's a great idea. We can, through our PR system here, we can do a blurb out and put it on our website to promote it more. But I also think that approach is good right now. If we come back and we look at renewing or updating our plan, that then would have a whole holistic thing to itself, because we may have a new mandate, we may have new areas that are under the program, a lot of things. So anticipating that change may happen next year, if possible, I think I would recommend that we stay with the staff initiative to get the message out there, and then if we redo it, we come back with a full-fledged attack on it.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Mr. Mayor, did you want to comment
Just to follow up,
Yeah.
I think that's commendable and that's good. And what I'd be interested in is, again, a broad-based, and maybe there could be some sort of staff report coming back to council, if there's some sort of change that's required. So for instance, one of the things that I heard a few years ago was, I don't want to stick my leg out or neck out and do the design. am I going to be paid for it? So other communities like Grimsby, for instance, and we were speaking with them, they went ahead and did a design of certain sections of the road. You know, is that some feedback that we can receive from those consultations, those direct one-on-one consultations with staff? I'd be interested in receiving something if there's sort of a congealing of ideas or opinions on that, so that we can make the program even better.
Great. Anything further for?
I think you had Councillor Papp, and I cut him off.
Councillor
Sorry.
Papp, did you have a
No,
comment?
I think the mayor's picking up, I think, two things that we've already stated. Obviously, we need to review the CIP. Secondly, I think through you, Trevor, what I've heard recently, even though, is that there seems to be, and Councillor Durley hit this as well, people don't seem to understand what this is, what it is, how it's used, et cetera. So the one-on-one works. I think some sort of public relations, it's raising the awareness and the education of the general public so they know what they can do and not do. And I say this in the context that there are some empty windows downtown, and there are some, though, on the positive side, some interested businesses, and they were just, this conversation took place a couple of weeks ago. People were asking, well, what can I do, Peter? What can I said, there's access to CIP, da-da-da-da. So this is great, but the public, how can I say, through our PR would be very, very helpful, even to the point where the Mr. Mayor was suggesting, which was not a bad idea, sometime later is even a small open house just to say, by the way, we have this program, here's how it works. You guys want to come by? And I think both our associations, PBA and the Chamber, would be happy to support something like that, just to give people a general sense of what's happened.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if that's worthwhile.
Mr. Director?
Yes, even without council direction, that's something we can definitely do.
Perfectly.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chair.
There's nothing further from the committee. I have one question. Talk about having a vision of what this committee might do. I wondered how are we handling the architectural review of proposals? In the past, we've been engaging an outside firm at some cost. I had envisioned that might be a role of this committee if we could garner the expertise. Are we going to keep that review in-house? Because presumably our in-house people have the vision of what we are trying to accomplish there, as opposed to a firm that's maybe in Toronto or Hamilton or wherever. So I just asked that question for clarity.
At this point, I don't have a direct answer for that. I can see, we don't have many CIP applications. We'd like to increase that, so we have a CIP coordinator now for the town. He's going out to solicit information on that, and as we get more, we'll become more sophisticated in the planning of it, as well as understanding where we need to fine tune or improve the CIP plan when we look at it again. But I can go back to staff, the coordinator specifically, and look at the old case files that we have and figure out maybe what is the best approach, and come back to council with a recommendation on how to deal with that issue.
I'd appreciate that. I don't know whether the rest of the committee feels the same.
Good to get that.
Thank you. So, to the question, all those in favor? Carried. I have a motion by Councillor Papp that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue summary report entitled 2014 Projected Year-End Surplus Recommendation, and that committee recommend to council that 2014 projected year-end surplus be allocated to the working funds reserve. Discussion. Mr. Mayor.
I don't want to jump ahead of Councillor Papp
No,
again.
no,
so
no,
if he
go,
has a-
go, go
You
ahead.
put your hand up first, so
Well, thank you, Mr.
You
Chair.
beat me to the punch.
I guess looking through the detail, certainly I'm in favor of the recommendation, but just looking through the detail, one of the ones that stood out was utilities.
Yeah.
And I note that we kind of took quite a hit on that, almost $80,000. And I do note as well, I did research that we did fix it for 2015 a little bit, so it wasn't as high as was the actuals last year, but slightly lower, I think 240 or something. So how confident are we with that number? We expected that be over, or I guess that utilities number really had some impact on us. I don't know if the treasurer can comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we've had extensive discussions with Ms. Holland with respect to the utilities and ways to reduce the amount of utilities for 2015. She was quite confident with the numbers she put into the budget with working with the Director of Public Works. And you know, the severe weather, it's very difficult to predict the weather that we're getting and stuff, but she did anticipate some increases. She is doing stuff around some of the facilities right now to help reduce hydro costs and so forth, the use of heaters to warm places and stuff like that, using other sources of energy. So she is working, she's cognizant of it, and I am very much on top of her about it as well, to make sure that we come in online with budget.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No.
Councillor Pat, brief.
I'm good. I'm just answered.
I have one brief question, if I may. When I look at, through the description, I look at materials and supplies, I see that there's been some significant increases in these areas. And despite all of the effort to, you know, move to a more electronic-based system, we seem to still be exceeding our budget, you know, between clerk's department and finance department, or pardon me, between finance and shared administrative, we're $93,000 over what was our budgeted number. I just wondered what was behind that. And
It's actually not a material and supply in the finance department, it's the write-offs for the assessment from
I see.
MPAC. So they're offset by the supplementals. MPAC has changed the way that the write-offs occur. If you have a change of use of property, you write down one use, which shows up in this area, and then you put the supplemental in the revenue side. So this isn't the use of resources, it's simply for the write-offs that are in that area. In the shared administrative area, that is the deductible paid on insurance claims. We budget for what we believe will happen based on averages. We had more insurance claims resolved last year, so that's what that hit was there. We do have an insurance reserve amount that we could bring in, but we didn't need it because we were still in a surplus situation, so that was okay to leave it there.
as a follow-up, Madam Treasurer, for transparency, would it not be beneficial to the public, for example, when they look at that, that we would have a separate line entry to distinguish between materials and supplies and just your explanation? I mean, you can't tell by looking at that in fact it's not materials and supplies, but that it is two very specifically different things.
Okay, so in the accounting system, under accounting rule, it is a material and supply, according to the auditors. So that's why it's lumped into that. That's why we put the special notes in there. There's a note that says that is specifically a write-off in that area. Because if we start dissecting some of these things out, we're going to have too much for a page. So we kind of summarize and then put our notes down so that you can have that explanation.
Thank you for
Okay.
the clarity. Anything else? If not, call a question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And last but not least, I have a motion by Councillor Papp that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Tuesday, April 7th, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned.
8:30, Terrence?
All up?
Not the golden child tonight, are you, Terrence?